Adir Wanono, whom you already met. Adir is a PhD candidate examining the emergence of basketball analytics in the NBA. He holds a Master of Laws from UC Berkeley with honors, a Master's of Philosophy and Bachelor of Law with honors from Tel Aviv University. Adir will tell us about playing with numbers, how the concept of efficiency changed the game of basketball.
Hello. This is approximately the research that I do. I'm trying to see what were the conditions for the emergence of basketball analytics in the NBA. And what I find more interesting is how this new classification and technological infrastructures changed the game of basketball, which is not something that we could imagine 10 or 5 years ago. So we'll talk in the beginning about the traditional classification system, then on the rise of basketball analytics and the supporting technological system, and then on the new game that revealed consequently. So this is Doug Collins. When he was the NBA head coach, the Chicago Bulls head coach in '86, nobody was considering basketball analytics. Nobody knew about it, and most of the basketball professionals and coaches use the eye test in order to evaluate players and teams. What they thought is that the experience and the natural gut instinct perceptions of these professionals will allow them to have a sense of the type of players that will be successful in the NBA. But in the early 90s, several basketball fans with the obsession to numbers and statistical analysis challenged the old classification system. This is the box score, by the way. So I'll go back for a second. We had the eye test, which is natural, and you know, people used it watching players play or looking at games and trying to understand the strategies and the tactic that they use. And except of this eye test, which is very subjective, they use the box score. This is the same table that we all know from the sports section of the newspaper, which shows us the number of points a player scored, how many steals he made, rebounds, assists, etc. This is, you can see on the top column, top row. But those basketball analytics pioneers in the 90s, they challenged this, the ability of the box score to tell us something important about basketball. So one thing is that the box score, there were two problems with the box score. One of them is that it's incomplete. It counts only a small portion of the events that occurred in the basketball, on the basketball court. And the second, it credits only the end result of the play. And since basketball, as opposed to tennis or baseball, is a team game, the ultimate team game, it's a bit misleading to ascribe numbers and value to the player who made the end result of the play. So each player, it depends on other players that play with him, and every move that he takes or every action that he takes impact the others. Then in February 2001, a new thing called the internet happened. It was a new phenomenon back then. And Dean Oliver was one of the forefathers, maybe the first one, who wrote a book about basketball analytics. He created a group, a forum in Yahoo Groups, and he wrote, to start off the group, I think that it is most appropriate to identify some of the outstanding questions in basketball. And this was the first time that people from all around the world, different places in the world, found out that they are not alone in their obsession, in their habit to use numbers in order to understand better basketball. So it was the first time that they shared methods and way of thinking about basketball, and they tried to understand it better, to find out what was the truth behind the numbers. I will recollect it for a second. So this was the first time the internet and the new classification system that was based on efficiency rather than points per game or rebounds per game. The basketball analytics based on efficiency or the points that a player or a team makes per possession or per play. A possession is we define possession by the time that a team gain possession of the ball or gain control over the ball, and until the time it loses it or turn it over. So we had this basketball analytics new classification and new methods of analysis. But what really made the difference is that the league decided to use this technology, sports view system, which is actually a missile tracking system that were used in the Israeli army. And they used this to transform it to a basketball tracking system. This system, as you can see, is installed in every arena in the NBA. There are 6 cameras that are installed in the catways of the arenas, and they measure the positions of the players and the ball 25 times per second. So we know everything. We know where are the places that the player prefer to play in, what are the distances between them, the pace that they run, the distance that they cover, how many shots they make from each spot on the court, and this is very valuable information for the league. Actually, it took a lot of time for the league to understand that the basketball analytics gives them some advantage or can explain something about basketball. The traditional way to look at basketball was, as I was saying, the eye test. So people were, they were relying on their gut instincts, and the same Doug Collins said, even in 2012, after the analytics revolution, that all the analytics that he needs is in his stomach and in his head. He's not working in the NBA anymore. So it takes some time for the NBA to understand, for teams to understand that they gain advantage from the basketball analytics, and that the system can give them advantage, and the analytics department takes over. So every team set up a department of 2 or 3 people, computer scientists or statistical experts, that will analyze the basketball, classify the information, the gigantic amounts of information that this system collects. And the NBA forced all the team to share the information between them, to share the information, the raw data, with their opponents. Although basketball is, the idea is that you have to win games, it seems a little awkward that you have to share this information with your opponents, but the important thing is that you can't share, you don't have to share the methods of analysis or classification system that you use. And I think that this is the important thing. So each team set up this analytics department and developed its own methods of analysis and classification system. But let's go for a second. Let's see you can see it? So this is the sports view system, and this is how the analytics experts see it. so they don't watch games like this, but those moving dots, this culture of moving dots, as Yago Kolas call it, it gives teams a lot of information, and they can see, you can see the numbers of the number that appear on the jerseys of the players, and the ball movement, and teams can do a lot with these numbers. Anyway, we were here already, right? Cool. Okay, so this is the main course now. And I'm most interested in that, I think. How is it possible that a lot of new numbers and one standard that any team shares, which is the standard of efficiency, changed the game so dramatically in 5 years? So what we can see since the teams employed the standard of efficiency, we saw an explosion in number of shots beyond the arc. This is a basketball court, or half of it. You can see this is the basket. So up until 10 or 5 years ago, the idea was, the game strategy was to push the ball forward as closer to the basket as you can and try to score from there, from below the basket. And it seems obvious. As closer to the basket you are, the easiest is to score, and the percentage of each shot is higher. And that's what teams did for 100 years. And then, since we know what are the percentages from each spot on the court, the teams revealed that there is another spot on which there is efficient to shoot the ball, and this is beyond the arc. 10 years ago it was a good shot, but it seems a bit arrogant to shoot from beyond the arc. It wasn't as safe as shooting from below the basket, and most of the teams and most of the players try to push the ball forward and to fight over space, both below the basket and on the mid-range. What we can be sure about is that if we see the mid-range, we can see that it's not. If you shoot for the mid-range, this is all this. It's 4 to 6 meters. This is inefficient shot. It's actually a waste of a shot. You know why is that 1.07 and 1.26? It's like, if we know the percentage of success of every shot, we can multiply it in the points we gain from the shot, and we have the points per possession, points per shot that we gain. So if we shoot in 63% from below the basket, we gain 1.26. If we shoot from beyond the arc, we gain 1.07 because it's 35 point something percent, and the mid-range is 0.8. So it's inefficient, as I said. And this is the best example of what happened in the game, I think. Daryl Morey, who is the first general manager who embraced the basketball analytics wholeheartedly. This is his team in 2010 on the left side. We can see the frequency of shots from each spot on the court. And in 2010, they shot from everywhere, even from the mid-range, but mostly they shot from below the basket. In 2016, they eradicate those shots from mid-range because they are inefficient, and they decided to shoot either from beyond the arc or from below the basket. So this is the game strategy of Houston Rockets, and it's a great example of what happened in the game. But since people are shooting from beyond the arc, far from the basket, the defense has to go out as well. They have to guard them far from the basket as well, and all the where is it? And all this area here, since it's empty now, and we are playing in a bigger field, although the court dimensions didn't change at all. We are playing in a bigger playing field right now. Now it's easier for the smaller players to drive into the basket, and this is some of the changes that happened. But we can see that it's, at least here, it seems dramatically. We'll see a couple of more changes. These are the numbers of the average number of shots NBA team made per season, and we can see how it increased during the last 5 years. It's more than 75% increase. So we talked about the court, which opened up, and we know that more big men, that their essential quality 10 years ago was to play with their back to the basket. They had to use their power, their physical strength, and get closer to the basket and try both to score the ball, but both to defend the people who drive into the basket and try to score there. So physical strength was very important back then, and the ability to play with the back to the basket. We won't get into it, but it was an important and valuable skill. These are the numbers, just to have a sense. If in 2010 or 2011, there were only 16 big men who shot from beyond the arc in the league, today we have 49 big men who shoots beyond the arc. This is another, I have a lot of graphs. So this is another one. We see that in the 1990s, there were less than one player per team that shot one shot on average per game from beyond the arc. Today we have more than 5 players per team who shoots more than 2 shots per game from beyond the arc. So it's a dramatic change. The player also changed physically. If the skills that you need today are different from the skills that you had that you needed 10 years ago, so I pick different players to play for my team because I need the advantage on other teams. So if I have to guard outside, far away from the basket, I need quicker players, more agile players, and not necessarily physical players who can play close to the basket. So we see that there are actually very important or very important changes in the physical attributes of or features of the players in the NBA today. They actually, so we favor quickness, agility, and the ability to shoot from beyond the arc over the other traditional physical and other skills. And the media also updated the discourse. Journalists now use more graphs and try to back their opinions on basketball analytics and numbers. Let's see a short video, 10 seconds, from yesterday, by the way. I don't know. I didn't grow up seeing basketball like that, but it seems like fans like this kind of measurements. Okay, so we don't have time. Those who opposed those basketball analytics, like Doug Collins that we saw earlier, who said that all the analytics that they need are in their head and stomach, they lost their jobs, and of course others gain jobs, and not necessarily the people that we used to see in the basketball front offices. The basketball analytics experts, most of them at least, are again computer scientists and students who graduate from math and statistics, and they are not the same people who were former basketball players or coaches. So this is the last point. I revealed last week that the NBA announced that they are hiring 15 people, humans, it needed to be said, that will track the effort of the players. They will watch games and will try to track the efforts of the players. Things that the sport view system can't do accurately. I tried to talk to sports view system. They said that they do it accurately and they don't understand why the NBA does it. But we see that the humans are now, or the data exploits human, and for the sake of having a complete information or complete set of data. Just a second. And I think what is interesting in the last sentence, what is interesting in basketball, I think, is that the changes are visible. We can do research and we can find the changes in the practice, the scientific practices and discourse and language and the way that people works when the infrastructure is changing. But I think that in basketball you can actually see it, as we saw earlier in the heat maps. It's both visual, but we can see how the players are moving differently on the court, how their skills are different right now, and even their physical features are changed during the time. And for me, at least, it's another example where the numbers and words demonstrate their power. Thanks.
Thank you.